single day, the pillar of smoke and cloud led them during the day, and at night it lit up with fire so that they could still see it. It doesn't say occasionally, it says every single day. So I find it kind of irritating, honestly, that they're like, Moses, why are you leading us in the wilderness? And Moses is like, dude. But, that's how we do, right? That's how we do. Because it's easier to blame somebody, right, than to trust and move in the directions. And I think we get confused about leaders. We think leaders are magic. Leaders have power. Leaders solve problems. Leaders don't solve problems. I mean, sometimes they find solutions, but they're not the ones that solve the problems. See, my thought about leaders, and I mentioned this earlier, my thought about leaders is especially moral leaders. Their job is to orient us towards God. And especially religious leaders, they're not supposed to have some closer connection to God. They're just supposed to say, I'm pretty sure God is in this direction. I'm pretty sure these are the things that are of God. In my experience, this is where we're headed. And then the job of the people that follow that leader are to express, this is where I've experienced God. This is where I know. This is what's going on in my life that's confirming God's presence in my life. And then the people that follow the leader are almost obligated to share that stuff out because it course corrects, right? The leader's job is to right-size problems, to right-size and reorient, but they can't do that without relationship. Otherwise, it just is a reflection in the direction where all of us are experiencing the power and presence of the divine, because it's the same God. Now, the Hebrew people are getting distracted pretty seriously. And what are they focused on? Where God's not. They're focused on a scarcity mentality. But remember, it's been over 2 months that they've been in the wilderness, and they're just now getting hungry. And this is like thousands of people, right? So just in that fact that they made it 2.5 months in the desert and are just now starting to get hungry enough to complain about it is pretty significant. But that's not where they're starting from. They're starting from this place of, God, I don't even remember what slavery was like, but I remember not being hungry. And there's that lack of trust in this literal pillar of fire that's leading them. But I think there's something else that's important in this story, because when they complain, Moses doesn't have to take their complaint to God. Moses doesn't have to mediate with God. Moses doesn't have to convince God to act. God speaks first. They complain, we're hungry, we have this need, we need to eat. And God says to Moses, let the people know that I'm going to take care of your need. Because God doesn't save us from the wilderness of our lives. God saves us in the wilderness of our lives. And there's something powerful about expressing your need, because it's an act of trust, right? When you say, I need this is important to me, this matters, and I'm lacking it, I need this. It's an act of trust that need matters to the person you're sharing it to. And when you share your need with God, it's an act of trust that God is going to meet your need. It's a demonstration that you're willing to follow this pillar of fire, to express your need to God. And I actually think that, I'm trying to think that our needs are actually now, of course, the problem here is, what do we really need? And how many of our needs are manufactured? How many of our needs are invented? That we don't need. right? Consumerism is on the way of empire for a reason, because it convinces us that certain things are needs when they're not. And it distracts us from what our shared needs are by focusing on what our personal needs might be. And this is where prayer is so important, is because taking your need to God in prayer, you know what God does with your prayer? God refines your prayer. Have any of you ever noticed this? When you start praying for something, your prayer changes. You start bringing it to God on a regular basis, and the thing you're praying for moves a little bit. It gets a little bit more clear. Some of the trappings come off of it. And it's like, oh, that's actually what I need. I thought it was this, but it's over here. So that's God's active work in your life of prayer, is to help to refine your need. Not to negate it, because God knows our needs better than we do. Often we aren't really super aware of what we really need. We just know there's something wrong, there's something amiss. You had that moment where you're like, I don't know what's going on, but something's not right. And sometimes we can just stuff it, we distract ourselves. Some of us are writing people, and we have to sit down and we start journaling, and then all of a sudden, it's revealed to us on the page. Or some of us are quiet, and we have to sit and not be distracted, and then it comes to us. Or some of us need to talk. We need to find somebody we can talk to, and in our talking, it'll be revealed what's really there. Those are all acts of prayer, of connection to source. And it's an act of trust to take your need to source. Because God's not going to save us from the wilderness of our lives. God's going to save us in the wilderness of our lives. Got it. So here's my actual question for you, and this is maybe the most difficult question. Are you comfortable being somebody who needs? And then I'll further ask the question, are you comfortable of being somebody who needs things in particular? It's one thing to say, oh yeah, I need food and sleep, right? I need a safe place to be, and I need warmth, and I need clothes, right? Everybody needs that. But are you comfortable with your particular need for alone time? Or your particular need for, what's an example of something that you need in particular, that other people don't seem to need, that you need? Say it again? Medicines, right? If you have a particular medical condition and other people don't seem to need it, or you have a particular diet that you need to follow and other people don't seem to, are you comfortable having that particular need? Are you comfortable? See, we talk about our individuality as if it's this great thing, right? Like our particular expression, our particular manifestation, our particular skills, right? Like our individuality is really important. Do we also think that about our needs? That our particularity of our need is actually important? Because I find that most of the time when we have a need that's different from the group, we're more likely to minimize it, to hide it, to mask it, to pretend that it doesn't matter, because we don't want to disrupt the flow of the group. We don't want to be a problem. We don't want to be that complainer who needs gluten-free crackers, right? We just want to keep on keeping on. But what if that particular, love you, what if that particularity of our need is actually about breaking open the possibility of the community being more effective at being welcoming and loving and caring? Because what if you expressing your particular need is actually a need that other people in the room have that you didn't know about? Or what if you expressing your particular need for handrails or disability access is something that opens up the community to be able to be more serving of people that aren't here? Maybe the fact that you share your need breaks open something about the way that we've been organized that we haven't even been thinking about, that now makes it possible for more people to be part of this community and this movement. What if your need in particular is actually a gift from God? Because I think our needs are part of our spirituality because they humble us. They say that I can't do this on my own. I need something outside of myself. And if we are able to embrace our needs, it makes us more likely that we'll be able to embrace the particularity of needs of others. So our need not only humbles us, but it makes us more compassionate. It helps us to connect with each other. But the world wants us to minimize our needs, or to focus our needs to not really to not need. The goal is to not be in need, right? And that's why altruism is also on the way of empire, because it assumes that the best way to be is to be constantly giving out to others, to not have a self that has needs, to not have an orientation or a location that matters. Ultimately, altruism is this way of negating the self, that your only value is in service to other people, but you actually matter to God. And your particularity and your needs actually matter to God. And expressing our needs is a way of reshaping our community to being more like a place that is governed by God. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years in the wilderness. This is not the last time they're going to complain about not having food. Just like it's not the last time they're going to complain that Moses is leading them in the wilderness. They're going to constantly stop noticing these things that are true. They're going to constantly stop noticing somehow this giant pillar of fire and cloud that leads them every single day. They're somehow going to stop noticing that they have their needs provided for them in the wilderness for an entire generation. But they're not going to stop noticing that they are in need. And the message that they're going to receive back from God through the wilderness is that their needs do matter to God.